And I am with Intercultural Communication at Tarleton State University. This chapter is Chapter 3, Culture's Influence on Perception. And you guys, in the background, those are bugs with seasonings, and they're actually part of an exhibit at the Insectarium when it was in New Orleans. And so it was one of my favorite museums. But I wanted to tell you that, remember, other cultures can perceive things differently. We commonly do not eat bugs in the US, but other cultures do, and I decided to dig in, and they actually have a lot of protein. So yeah, perception is very important, and to know as you travel and as you speak with different people, communicate with different cultures, it's important to know that we have to check our perceptions quite often. All right, guys, so I'm just getting back from an international trip, and it was important to make sure that I communicated in a very effective way. And so one thing that I do want to highlight as part of this chapter is that sometimes you just have to, remain chill for a while. In the US, I'm very outgoing, but in other countries, when I'm there, I tend to be very reserved at first, so I can get like basically what is okay in the culture and what is not, what topics to cover and what not. And so it's very important for me to know that first before like jumping in, into communication with other people. But I observe, and I would encourage you guys to observe before you, engage fully in, communication with another culture. Just observe, see what the do's and don'ts are. Okay, so Eastern cultures are skeptical of language, and Western cultures are skeptical of intuition. So if you think about Eastern cultures, think about cultures like in Asia or other Eastern cultures around that region. They are typically skeptical of language. They very much focus on the nonverbal, and you'll see this throughout the presentation. So Eastern cultures are very high context cultures. They focus a lot on the meaning behind body language and what your face actually is communicating, rather than what we say. Western cultures are very focused on language, and that Western cultures are low context cultures. We talk a lot, like the US and Germany and other cultures, but within other cultures like the US, it's important to know that we are very, very skeptical of language. So, we're very skeptical of intuition, but we fully embrace language. Also, I want you to know if this very long P word is phenomenological, and so that basically means that you are looking at themes based on your lived experience. So you as a student at Tarleton State, you're able to, when you go to another university, I'm just going to mention Stephen F. Austin. I just happened to graduate from there for my undergrad, but it's important to know that you are both purple and white. However, there are strong differences between Stephen F. Austin and Tarleton State. So it's important to know, based on you visiting that institution, you might think you know everything about the institution, but there are very, very subtle differences between both. And so you can kind of put those differences in perspective based on your experience as a student. And so you know about homecoming, but maybe they have different traditions. You know about everyone's going to have midterms and finals, but they might occur at different times, or they might occur, earlier or later. So you know about just generally about what the other culture might experience. However, it's important to know that it's not going to be, the same. So you put it into perspective based on your own experience. That's all phenomenology is. And it's, like it says, knowledge found in direct experience. And then also it's important to know how you relate to that experience. And also, last but not least, that language, the way that we communicate verbally and non-verbally, is a vehicle for meaning. So based on how you react, or if you're disgusted by something, that can also communicate meaning as well to another person. All right, so let's also look at attribution theory. So basically, people will infer that you are acting a certain way because of that's how you were raised, or because sometimes I'm from East Texas, and so sometimes people will say, "Oh, well, he didn't know any better," or "She didn't know any better," and so or they didn't know any better, and so they actually create causes for our behavior or for others' behavior. So it's very interesting. But I wanted to bring that up because as you go to other cultures, you might actually, whether correctly or incorrectly, attribute someone's behavior based on how we perceive their culture. And so sometimes that can be good, and also sometimes that can not be as good. So just check your attribution, check your perception as well. All right, so sensing is very important. And so, based on our senses, we can perceive culture differently. And also, I want to preface this part by indicating that different people have this different sense of smell, or sense of or hearing ability, smell ability, taste ability, touch, and body movements. And so, it's important to know that we experience the world differently. So, you and the person sitting next to you at any given time will probably not have the same sense of smell, will probably not have the same sight, and so our level of sight. And so it's important to know how you and also others have limitations, and based on your limitations, or based on your ability, you're able to perceive things a little bit differently. So if we think about sight, we can see things up close like an ant or a cantaloupe, or something as far as 1,200 feet, but depending on your ability, you might not be able to do that. Also with hearing, on average, it has been quoted that we can hear from 20 to 20,000 vibrations per second, but it's depending on your ability, and also if you're older or younger, that can have an impact on your hearing as well. Also smell, we have 5,000 different smells that we can sense. However, those will vary because based on things that we've experienced, or I know that some people actually lost their sense of smell over the past few years. So it's very important to know that we need to keep in mind that everyone might not have the same ability, or everyone does not have the same ability, and to know limitations based on perception, and that influences perception as well. There are two terms that I want you to know: umami and also manus. And so umami is basically the savoriness of something. So it's a taste that someone can place on your tongue, and based on it's funny, but based on the way that we can perceive taste, we can either think it's very savory, or we can experience nothing at all. And so based on the different, like some people lose their taste buds, and so it's important to know that the perceptions or the senses can really impact the way that we interact with others. Manus is basically the sense that several groups have different reactions to the same taste. And so when I was in Australia a few weeks ago, it was funny because I tasted, oh my goodness, I tasted Vegemite. And so it was an experience. Some people think it's sweet. Some people think it's very savory. Some people think it's fishy. I thought it was very fishy and gritty, and it wasn't my favorite. However, I know a lot of people love Vegemite, and it's important to know that, they have Vegemite ice cream, but it was not my favorite. But just to know that different people perceive things different ways. So I couldn't say, oh my goodness, I hated it, which I didn't, but it was just different. But you can't say that when you go to another culture, because you don't want to offend them. I'm also going to post a video. The Royal Australian Navy actually did a snack exchange with the U.S. Navy, and I'll post that video a little bit later because I thought it was kind of funny. They had Takis for the first time. Takis are not in Australia, so it was very interesting. All right, so with touch and with body movements, people have different body movements that they are able to do and that they're not able to do. And it's important to keep that in mind whenever we're speaking with different cultures. And sometimes people from different cultures move differently. Sometimes people are very touchy-feely, and sometimes people are not. So it's important to know that different cultures can sense different stimuli or different senses differently. All right, so there's also there is an acronym that I want you to know. It's SOI, or SOI, and that is selection, organization, and interpretation. So selection means what you pay attention to. So if you hear your name in a crowd, you've heard your name 1,000 times, probably more. I know I've heard my name probably more than that because I used to get in trouble as a kid, but it's important to know that, your name is very unique, especially to you. And so to hear your name in a crowd is what we pay attention to. In the U.S., vowel length of our names and vowel length of words is not a really big deal. However, in Japan, where they speak Japanese, Obasan is aunt, but Obasan is grandmother. So a very long accentuation to the A. And so based on the way that we put the vowel length in the word will depend on whether we're talking about our aunt or our grandmother. Also, organization. So after we figure out exactly what we're going to pay attention to through selection, we will go to organization, and that is how we will organize. So if you hear your name in the crowd and you're like, oh, who called me? Oh, it's Jim. And so you're organizing, oh, Jim's here too. So you're organizing why Jim's there, why Jim called your name. So you're organizing everything. And so we also organize things that we experience through like color. So in the US, we have a lot of white in our emergency rooms, but in other countries, white isn't considered to be a color of death. And so when people come here from other countries, it's important to know that if they wake up and they see white and they're all white in their room, we're trying to make it sterile, keep it sterile, but other cultures might perceive that to be not a good thing, that they perceive that death may be on the horizon. And so it's important to know that color symbolizes different things for different cultures. All right. And then also Shibui is the perception that colors are important, but colors are not necessarily with Shibui, not showy or gaudy or, being, being extra, but it's basically the being serene and understated. And Shibui does not have a direct equivalent to the English language. We don't have a word for it in the English language, but it's basically showing you guys that different cultures have different words for what they experience. And so it's very important to know that sometimes we don't have an equivalent for words in the US, with the English language spoken here by some individuals in the US. And it's important to know that you need to check your perception. So we organize things based on our experience and our perception. And also we interpret it. We might interpret it very differently depending on where you're from and the experiences you have been fortunate to have. So it's selection, hearing your name in a crowd, organizing, oh, Jim called my name, and interpretation, why is Jim here? Let me go talk to Jim. And also, like when I was in Australia, we actually, I didn't eat it, but they had kangaroo burger. And so some people from our team had kangaroo burger. And so selection means finding it on the menu. Organization means, oh, wow, I probably want to order that because I'll probably never have it again. And you ask the person who you placed the order with, and they said, oh, it's kind of like, I don't know, chicken. I'm just making this up. It's kind of like chicken. And so you're like, I've had chicken before. Kangaroo burger, kind of like chicken, less fat. I think I'll try it. So you organize it in your mind, and the interpretation is actually, experiencing the kangaroo burger. So sorry to put that out there for you guys. I did not have kangaroo burger, but based on your perception, I think kangaroos belong in, outdoors and, happy lives, and other people perceive them as like a delectable dish. So perception can influence a lot. All right, guys, you don't have to do this right now, but it's important to check your perception as well, because based on your experiences, you might complete this quiz a little bit differently. So pause your video, take this quick test, say the colors of each word aloud. I'm not any good at this, but say the colors of each word aloud and see how well you do. And it's important to know, based on our experiences, we might be stellar at this, but we also, if we organize things by the actual color, but if you organize things by the actual word, you might not be as stellar. And I'm a word person, so I'm not going to do this, but pause it and you do this. Also, we talked about this a little bit, but it's important to know that with people experience things a little bit differently depending on the country that you're from or the parts of the country that you're from. And so in Arab cultures, dogs do not live in the house, they might live outdoors. And it's important to know that even with different commercials, that might be a different process as well. So perception can influence the way that we interact with other cultures and interpret things as well. And these were like people eating bugs. I mean, not bugs, but like fried bugs. But just to know that that's not common in the US, but is common in a lot of other countries and cultures. Okay, so let's go to the high and low context cultures. So again, high context cultures like Korea and Japan, they focus more on the nonverbal, what's not spoken. And then low context cultures like Germany, the US, the UK for the most part, they're focused on verbal rather than nonverbal. So what we say, we talk a lot in the US. And then also, I'll leave you guys with the concept of face. I also call this a effect display or an effect display. And basically that is the perception of if we think about saving face, that's the confidence of society in our moral character, but also behind face we have image. So that is basically how we live our lives and the people that we are when we are, we just want to be, we just want to, like, behind closed doors, that's our image, or that's our daily life. And so Leon is our face that we want other people to perceive, and it's the confidence of society in your moral character, who we aspire to be or who we want to be on the outside. The image is basically our inner being. So that's how we persist through life, the people that we are, no matter what. And so that is the concept of face and saving face, if you've heard that before. But it's important to know that different cultures perceive face differently, how important it is to be the image Mion, no matter what. All right, guys, so I'm excited that you joined this video. If you have any questions, or when you have questions, you can type them in the box below, or you can simply send a message to me on Canvas, or just send an email to me if you're not a Tarleton student. And my email address is jtedwards@tarleton.edu, and I'll see you guys soon.